static GK questions were more, so GK section was overall tough.
All right. And what's the feeling about quantitative aptitude? Oh, they call it mathematics and logical reasoning. Okay.
I think it was also a little tough than last year.
Okay, slightly tougher than last year.
Yeah.
And what about English?
It was easy.
Okay, English was easy.
Comparatively
So how many questions you generally attempted in English, Kavya?
I attempted all questions since there was no negative marking, but I think I knew at least 20 to 23 correct questions in English.
Okay, 22, 23 you marked genuinely and you attempted all, right? Okay, all right. So first of all, my feeling about the examination, overall, more or less, it was how TISSNET 2022 was. So there can be a difference of a mark or two, either up or down, most probably down. Okay, so we expect the cutoff for MA in HRM and LR for general category in the range 67 to 69. More or less been almost 100% accurate in the last 3 years, and I hope that this time also I would be accurate. So we believe that the cutoff for MA in HRM and LR at TISSNET for general category would be in the range 67 to 69. Are you with me on this, Kavya?
Yes, I think the cutoff should go 1 or 2 marks less.
Okay, last year the cutoff was 67, so that way you believe that it would be in the range 65.
Yeah.
Okay, so Kavya believes that the cutoff would be around 65. I believe that it would be around 67. If I'm pressed hard to give one figure, I would say it would be around 67. Should not touch 70 for sure. All right, now section by section and certain differences as well. First of all, I do not know. Earlier they used to name the English section as English proficiency, but this time it was named verbal reasoning. Did you notice this?
No,
Okay, so name of the section was verbal reasoning this time. Though actually there was hardly any change in the structure of the verbal reasoning. You had 2 passages of reading comprehension and 2 passages of 5 questions each and a lot of questions on spotting the error or probably synonyms, antonyms, parajumbles as well,
Yes.
right? So there are certain changes in mathematical and logical reasoning though. First of all, MBA 100 believes that the questions became more conceptual this year. There were certain questions which were more conceptual in comparison with how they used to be on TISSNET. I'll give you one example. They gave you one question that someone makes the statement that he was born on 29th of February 1900. Okay, and then they asked his age on some particular day. Okay, now of course, year 1900 is not a leap year, or was not a leap year, should I say. So straight away the answer was that he was lying. Similarly, in one of the questions, they gave you the appraisal ranking of some engineers and managers. Okay, and then they said that at least one person will get the minimum score and at least one person will get the maximum score of the range of the appraisal scores. And then they asked you 3 questions. Okay, so that I believe was conceptual. The other 2 sets were quite doable. I mean, not that this one was not doable, this one was also doable, but other 2 were more doable, I believe, because you didn't have to apply much of brains. You just needed to calculate, you needed to be involved, you needed to commit yourself to that. And yes, I mostly ask people to not to give 10 to 12 minutes, more than 10 to 12 minutes to general awareness section, and I ask them to read a lot of static general knowledge also. So what do you feel, Kavya?
Yes.
Were there questions from static general knowledge?
There were more questions from static general knowledge as compared to current affairs, I guess.
Okay, more or less I'm not sure about, but there were quite a few questions on static general knowledge. And there was one change in quantitative aptitude, rather mathematics and logical reasoning. That is that they had never asked you 3 sets of DI. This time there were 3 sets of DI of 3 questions each. So there were 21 questions of quantitative aptitude and 9 questions of DI. I would say one set was of DI and LR. It was more of logical reasoning than DI. Okay, isn't that, Kavya? The appraisal one. Okay, so it had some flavor of CAT. Of course, when it comes to the difficulty level, it was nowhere in comparison to CAT, but it had some flavor at least. What do you think is a good number of attempts in quantitative aptitude and LR? And don't say 30 out of 30 as there is no negative marking, Kavya. Genuine attempt. How many questions could have been attempted genuinely?
I think I attempted attempted around 18 questions genuinely, and a good scorer could attempt 23 questions.
All right, what do you mean by good scorer? And Kavya is an engineer, so we are hearing it from an engineer. Okay, yes, engineer.
Yes, actually there were two wrong questions, so I wasted a little time in them.
Very important, very important. Now hold on, Kavya. Today also on our Telegram group, I left a message for people. There were 4 or 5 points, and one of the points was that on an average, TISSNET comes with 2 errors every year, so please do not get stuck with them. Do not get stuck with any question in general, especially because of TISSNET coming with 2 erroneous questions every year. This instruction was given. So, Kavya, you shouldn't have got stuck with those questions. It's as simple and plain as that.
Yes, I learned from my mistakes.
Okay, all right. Now I would want to talk about those 2 questions. And in fact, my colleague Ashutosh, who is incidentally behind the camera, so is not visible to you, he also said that there are 2 erroneous questions. In one of the questions, one person is looking for his wife, mind you, wife, okay, and he was made to move 240 feet or 240 steps, I believe, but in the options, rather than talking about in the question, they very clearly asked about the total number of steps or total number of feet, okay, that the person had traveled. But among the options, you had the displacement. I'm sure that the people listening to me, they understand the difference between effective displacement and the total distance traveled by the person. The total distance traveled by the person would certainly be 240, which was not among the options. 140 was one of the options. Actually, 260 was one of the options. 100 is their intended answer, but we are certainly going to challenge this question. All right, so most probably your paper would be of 97 or 98 marks. Keep that in mind. I will be quite active here on this front myself, and I'm going to challenge, I believe, one question in English. Oh, sorry, they call it verbal reasoning. One question in verbal reasoning and 2 questions on mathematics and logical reasoning. The other question, which was certainly incorrect, was based on set theory. All right, because it starts like this, that there are 3 sets A, B and C. 21% people belong to set A. If 21% people belong to set A, the number of people belonging to all 3 sets is bound to be less than equal to 21. Isn't that, Kavya?
Yes.
And their
No.
intended, the formula gave you the answer as 55. So their intended answer would be 55, but believe you me, all 4 options were incorrect. So they needed to be more careful, and it has more or less become a norm. And in fact, I had made a video on the anxiety examination, right? So TISSNET, why can't you create 100 flawless questions, sir? Please start doing that. Okay, why to allow people to make fun of you? And what is there in these 2 questions? Why can't you, why could you not proof check these 2 questions? But anyway, overall, I'll give you some idea about a good score in mathematics and logical reasoning. I believe that a score of 23 to 24, as Kavya also suggested, is quite good in quantitative mathematics and logical reasoning. In English, I believe that a good score is again in the range almost similar, 23, 24. Okay, anyone who is going to touch or cross 25, I would probably rate that as a stupendous performance. In quantitative aptitude, stupendous performance can be considered a score above 27. 27 above 27 in quantitative aptitude can be considered stupendous. Now, most of you must be thinking that I've talked about English, I've talked about quantitative aptitude, but I'm yet to talk about the question, the section that troubles you the most here on TISSNET. Because anyway, MBA preppers, they do not take GK very seriously. Isn't that? Do you take GK seriously? Come on, do not lie to yourself. I'd asked you to do 1660 pages of static general knowledge. Okay, I'd given you a list of 10 books. I got not less than 100 hate messages that this is too much. Why do you expect us to do this much? Now you know the answer. Why do I ask you, or why do I expect you to do that much of static general knowledge? And please, I'm not a sadist, okay? So not that I'm taking any pleasure in your trouble, but the fact is that there were quite a few questions on static general knowledge. I'll give you some examples. They asked you that Dhrupad belongs to which gharana? The answer is Jumrao. Okay, when I was probably 7 or 8 years of age, had crammed it like this, the D for Dumrao, D for Drupad, 99% chance that my memory is serving me right. So probably that is the answer. I'll give you a few more answers there, so don't you worry. There was a question on Nobel Prize as well, that the first Asian to get Nobel Prize in literature. We believe Kavya is with me that the answer is Ravindranath Tagore. Okay, Ravindranath Tagore we should say. Okay, or Rabindranath Tagore. Tagore is anyway a corruption of Tagore, I'm sure you know. All right. So, okay, GK was tough. It was tougher than how it was last year. This is what my feeling is. This is what Kavya also feels. Okay, so what is a good score on GK? So we believe that anyone, cutoff is anyway 14 for general category, right? Anyone who touches 20 has done well here on this paper. What do you think, Kavya? No, you can disagree. We are live, so it doesn't make a difference. Okay, if you feel that no, it should be 25 or 30, that's absolutely okay. I believe that a score of 20 is good.
It was tough. I think it should be still 22.
Okay, so Kavya believes that should be 22. I believe that should be a good score is 20. So anyway, hardly any difference. So, but anyone who crosses 25, okay, has done extremely well. Kavya is saying 22, I'm saying 20. So even if we take an average of these two numbers, so 21 is a good score. Don't you worry. Okay. So again, 65 to 70, if you take a union of what we feel, but my feeling is that the cutoff for MA in HRM and LR should be around 67 for a general category candidate. Let's come to some questions now. I'm going to give you 27, 28 answers of quantitative aptitude, some 7, 8 answers of verbal ability, and some 5, 6 answers of general awareness as well. And if Kavya helps me, she helps me with some questions, and if I know the answer, I should be able to give you a few more answers. Okay? So let's start with English. In one of the questions, they asked you, basically, they asked you the antonym of pithy, P-I-T-H-Y. The answer to that would be verbose in the given context. Similarly, in one of the questions, I believe that the answer, this was a what you call filler, to me that is sentence completion with 2 blanks, right? So answer is tendency in the first blank and lead in the second. But Kavya differs there. Not that we have fixed this match and I trained her to say certain things, okay, before coming on the camera. So she differs here. What is your answer, Kavya? My answer is tendency and lead.
Yeah, the question was on halo effect actually. They were asking, so halo effect is something I think that has happened already. So I think the lead was the option that contained lead was the answer.
Okay, she believes that it was LED. The second blank had to be filled with LED. Okay, I differ. And once the response sheets are out, then we shall settle it. All right. Okay. Similarly, one of the answers in English was incongruous. Incongruous, for sure. One of the answers was riveting and sparkled. Riveting or riveting, whatever you call it. So, riveting and sparkled. One of the answers was buzzing and downbeat. Buzzing and downbeat. There had to be a contrast between 2 words to be filled, right? And the second had to be a negative, had to be a word with negative connotation. So I'm 100% sure that the answer was buzzing and downbeat. All right. Okay. Petrified, I've already told you that one of the answers was petrified. All right. So many of you got petrified when you saw a good number of static general knowledge questions in the general awareness section, isn't that? All right. So these are the questions that these are the answers that I remember of verbal ability, and of course there were 2 passages of reading comprehension. Both of them are quite doable, I believe. You just needed to read them. Okay, one was that how gender also determines the impact of climate change, isn't that? And do you remember the other one, the other passage?
Yeah, the other one was on technology.
The other one was on tech. All right. Okay. Now we have almost 27, 28 answers of quantitative aptitude. So let's start. One of the answers was 1 by 961 in probability. Many people, there were 3 slots. Each of the slots could be filled with the numbers from 0 to 30. So 0 to 30 okay, is 31, not 30. So many people might have marked 1 by 900 as the answer, but the actual answer is 1 by 961. Am I right, Ashutosh? 1 by 961. Similarly, one of the answers is 32% because in the question, the price has been raised by 10%, okay, and you give just 1 kg in place of 1200 grams,
Yes.
right? Okay, so the answer is 32%. Then one question was on stealing of GST, Gabbar Singh tax. No, no, no. That is, what is GST? I forgot. I only remember Rahul Gandhi's statement on GST that it is Gabbar Singh tax. Okay, you know, all right. So GST answer is rupees 345. Okay. Similarly, one of the questions was they had given you some data and they had given you monthly range and they had asked you that how many of these 5 would actually be outside the range of 2 times the standard deviation. The answer is 3 times. Three pieces of information out of the given 5. Okay. One of the answers was 5 divided by 8. I do not remember the question, but one of the answers was 5 divided by 8. One of the answers was 7 divided by 20. And one of the answers was 12 kilometer. When you go uphill, you travel for 2 days. Every day you walk for 4 kilometers. So distance, upward distance was 8 kilometers, right? While coming down also you take 2 days,
The
but
rate
your
was
speed
double.
increases by 50%. So answer is 12 kilometer. Okay. One of the answers was 2. There was a number, okay, there was a 2-digit number and that asked you that if we add another number to it which is created by reversing the order of the digits, the sum is 66. I believe the answer is 2.
42 and 24?
24 and 42,
42.
two
Yeah.
answers,
Yeah.
right? Okay. Similarly, one of the answers is a fall off. Now I'm coming to data interpretation. Okay, one of the answers was a fall of 354 rupees. A fall of 354 rupees. One of the answers was around 45%. One of the answers was again related to 354. So you did not need to calculate the same thing for the second time. That is wastage of time. That answer was rupees 1354. The difference between two figures. No, the value of one figure. Right? 1354. Okay, when it comes to the set on appraisals, and here I'm 100% sure, one of the answers was 30%, one of the answers was 11.89. I'll give you a few more answers. So one of the answers was 138 rows because they say that in the last row, 279 students were there.
Bus station and triangle question was that.
Okay, okay.
That
So
was a decreasing AP, I think.
decreasing AP, you're right. So
Yes.
138
8
was the
was the
answer.
answer.
138 rows. I'm sure that no one marked 139. Okay. Similarly, I've already told you one of the answers was that Ashok is lying. No one can be born on 29th of February 1900 and do not get surprised. A leap year, a century year is a leap year only if it is divisible by 400, not by just 4. Year 1900 or for that matter year 1800 or 1700, they were not leap years. Okay. Now, one of the answers was, and this was a good question because they expected you to mix two solutions, right? And then they asked you the value of x. X is greater than 120 and less than 300.
I got it right.
You got it right. So Kavya is so happy. Okay, x is greater than 120 and less than 300. There was another interesting question. That was based on, I mean, some cylinder or some sphere was given, and then they asked you that they make a sphere out of a cylinder or a cylinder out of a sphere. What would be the change in the volume? There would be change in shape. Why would there be any change in volume? Ashutosh, would there be any change in volume? No. So the answer is no change in volume. So it was a conceptual question. All right. Similarly, there was another conceptual question where they merely gave you an account, a person who kept withdrawing some money. Initially, he had
Yeah.
100 rupees, okay, and total sum, and he believes that he owed 1 rupee to the bank. He didn't owe anything to the bank, or even the bank did not owe anything to him. All right, so the conclusion drawn was incorrect. One of the answers was 9 root 3 for sure, the diagonal of something,
Yeah.
9 root 3, right? Okay, so one of the answers was 9 root 3 and Okay, so one of the answers was 3 raised to the power 10 plus 1 divided by 3 raised to the power 5. 3 raised to the power 10 plus 1 divided by 3 raised to the power 5 was one of the answers. Similarly, one of the answers was 0.0625.
Yes.
Isn't that? Because that asked you the
1 by 4
percentage
to the power
1 by 4 to the power 2.
2. Yeah.
One of the answers that I remember is, of course, Dumrao Gharana. Another answer, they asked you total number of union territories in India at this stage. The answer is 8.
8.
Ravindranath Thakur, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm 99% sure that is the answer to that first Asian to get a Nobel Prize in literature. In one of the questions, they had given you 3 points, okay? And then they asked you that for which value of k these 3 points would be collinear. Answer is 0.
0.
K equal to 0. Ashutosh, you remember the answer? K is equal to 0 is the answer. All right.
Distance 100 and 200. 200 was the distance between A and B, and 100 is B and C.
Yeah.
Okay. So inconsistent statement that I remember. Okay, that I remember. So answer to that question that Ashutosh is talking about was
I also want that.
okay, okay. Since I do not remember the sequence, so I would not comment on that. So which two are incompatible? That is what they had asked. Okay, that is what they had asked. Yes, I've been able to recall another question on probability. That there are two tasks, task 1 and task 2. The probability of task 1 getting done in time is 7 by 8 and task 2 getting done in time is 3 by 5. What is the probability on a given day task 1 would be done in time and task 2 would not be done in time? My answer to that is 7 by 20. Okay, 6.28 centimeter. Was it an answer to any question? 6.28 centimeter. I'm sure it was.
The minute, the radius of the
6
minute
point.
hand.
Yes. There was a question based on clock.
40 minutes.
Okay, 40 minutes, right?
Yeah.
So 2/3 of 2 pi, and R was given as how much? R was given as 1.5. So answer was 42. Answer was
6.28 centimeter.
42 by 7, 6.28 centimeter. Answer to that question is 6.28 centimeter. Is there any other question that we can answer and we can answer fast? The intended answer of set theory question would be 55, okay, but as I've told you that there were 2 questions which were definitely incorrect, okay, and I believe that one question where they asked you to use what as a verb? Lock as a verb. Okay, so both of us, Kavya and I, have marked engage as the answer, and then as I say that I'm equally good or equally bad at quantitative aptitude or English or general awareness, okay, so I kept struggling with all the 4 options given there, and I ultimately marked engaged. Okay, so I do not know if it was a brain fade moment for me. Standard deviation question, the answer was 3. Yes. 3 of that I've already shared with them. So, coming back to that the cutoff for general category for MA in HRM should remain around 67. Kavya thinks 65 to 67. I believe 67 to 70, because there's another thing on which it depends. It's not only the level of difficulty, which more or less remained the same or probably went a tad up this time. Okay, students prepare, they take TISSNET more seriously these days than they used to take it earlier. General awareness was more difficult than how it was last year. Quantitative aptitude, I wouldn't say more difficult or less difficult, I would say more conceptual. Ashutosh and Kavya, do you agree?
Yes.
Okay. And English, the level remained, it was a typical TISSNET, I wouldn't say English proficiency, I would say verbal reasoning section. All right. So that is it. We shall try to give you a detailed analysis also, though we believe that we have more or less covered it comprehensively here in this session itself. Okay. So all the best. In the next 2 to 3 days, we shall be releasing a video on CMAT prep. I'm sure you're aware of this. Let me boast a bit about myself, that I've got a single digit rank, including rank 1 on CMAT several times. Okay. Once, just 2 years back, my rank was 4. Take the video very seriously, prepare for each of the sections. Of course, apply your brain. I'm not a religion. I would not ask you to follow me blindly. Sorry. So of course, apply your brain. Okay. But do watch the video. Expect it in the next 3 to 4 days. All the best.